Everyone knows what analog horror is at this point, right? Sketchy old VHS videos with haunting symbolism and ethereal images designed to unsettle and unnerve. We watch these nowadays knowing it's some type of ARG or web series that we can pick apart and dissect with our grubby little fingers. But what if one of these was real? What if after you watched this weird video the phone began to ring? What would you do with 7 days to live? Oh, it's spooky season, y'all. I got the pumpkins and ghosties all about. I'm so ready to pass some candy out, let the sun go down, and curl up on the couch to watch a good horror movie. And today, my movie of choice, it's a classic that took my 12-year-old brain and made me terrified to answer phones or watch a static-filled TV for years to come. I'm talking, of course, about The Ring from 2002. The Ring, as I'm sure someone in the comments is already typing up furiously, is based on the Japanese horror film Ringu, which was released in 1998. It became a massive hit in Japan and is credited with popularizing the J-horror wave in the late 90s and early 2000s. There are absolutely purists in the audience today that I know are gonna give me shit, but back off, bub! I understand that the original is likely more influential and better, but guess what? I wasn't watching foreign films as a preteen. I had stupid little boy brain, and so much of this channel is based on what nostalgia I've cultivated by traumatizing myself at a young age. On release, The Ring received pretty good reviews. It became a box office success, grossing over $249 million worldwide, and cementing its status as a modern horror classic. The film also inspired sequels and further explorations of the J-horror trend in Hollywood. So why don't we hop into the film, shall we? Real quick before we revisit my nostalgic trauma, if you find yourself enjoying my content, a like or subscribe would be awesome. I just genuinely appreciate you stopping by, so don't feel pressure. I just figured I would mention it. I'm a small channel that isn't monetized at the time of recording, at least. Money doesn't keep me wanting to put hours and hours in on this content. It's all of you, interacting with the video and chatting with me in the comments. Alright, enough of my self-promotion. Let's do this. We open in a suburban home where two teenage girls, Katie and Becca, are chilling with no parents. Chit-chatting as girls do at slumber parties, you know?
You know, I heard there's so many magnetic waves traveling through the air because of TV and telephones that we're losing like 10 times as many brain cells as we're supposed to.
Radio towers and 5G, man. They're cooking our brains, dude! Becca switches the subject as she shifts into spooky story mode, telling Katie about this videotape. You watch it, get a phone call, and a voice on the other end says you have 7 days. Then 7 days later, you dead. Well, Katie has a weird reaction to this. It's hauntingly concerning when she says she watched the exact video when on a getaway with the boyfriend exactly 7 days ago. Only to play it off as a joke. But no sooner does Becca shove her off the bed in comedic disgust does the phone start ringing. That initial panicked look spreads across Katie's face again, as Becca mutters in realization.
It really is a tape.
They creep downstairs to answer the phone, and Becca takes the reins, picking it up. It turns out just to be Katie's mom checking in. Katie hangs up and starts to head back upstairs when from the other room a static-filled television turns on. Katie, putting on her bravery mask, tries to pin it as a prank by Becca, but stops mid-accusation when she notices the remote sitting on the couch right in front of her. She turns the TV off, and as she walks away, the thing is defiant, turning itself back on. Katie pulls the plug, but notices something in the reflection of the now dark screen. A mushy figure, that's the best way I can describe it, okay? Moves behind her, causing her to spin around. In the kitchen, the fridge door opens on its own. Katie is officially freaking the fuck out. She calls up to Becca but doesn't get an answer. As she reaches the top of the stairs, she notices water pooling out from under her bedroom door. Slowly, she reaches for the doorknob. In a final act of frustration, she swings the door open, revealing the image of a well on her TV. She screams as we watch her face start to rot when suddenly a bunch of images flash on the screen, followed by static. We cut to a kiddo, Aiden, sitting in a classroom alone coloring some interesting pictures. Rachel, his mom, shows up still on the phone about work stuff. She apologizes for being late as she pops into the classroom. The teacher asks Rachel for a minute to talk about Aiden. She raises concerns over how he's coping with the loss of his cousin Katie. Yep, the same Katie who just got murked. Apparently the two were very close. The teacher pulls out a portfolio of pictures depicting Katie in a grave. Rachel brushes this off, saying he is just expressing his grief and heads towards the door. But his teacher has a mic drop moment when she says,
Aiden drew these last week.
The two head back to the apartment and start getting ready for bed. Rachel tucks Aiden in and wishes him sweet dreams when this kid says the darndest thing.
I don't have enough time.
Rachel reassures him that he has plenty of time, to which he asks, "So you know when I'm going to die?" She responds saying that no one knows when they're going to die. But this creepy little dude, of course, says,
Kaden knew. She told me.
Katie told you she was gonna die?
She said she didn't have enough time. Good night, Rachel.
He hits her with the "Good night, Rachel," which I actually think is a good subtle detail to give you an idea of the nature of the relationship. The next day, the two get ready and head over to Katie's wake. Some people may watch this moment and think the acting is awful, but I want to point it out.
You alright, Dave?
Yeah, I'm fine. How are you?
If you've dealt with loss this tragic before, you can probably identify with the masking going on here. In the kitchen, Rachel is helping her sister Ruth clean up, and they get on the topic of how Katie died. Apparently, all the doctors were saying her heart just stopped, but her mom doesn't buy that story. She asks Rachel to do what she does as a journalist and find out the truth. Katie's mom mentions she saw her face, at which point we get the haunting aftermath of her death on screen. This is f***ing scary, dude. And the little lull of the head falling forward is just chef's kiss. That's good horror right there, I tell ya. Well, Rachel is immediately on the case. She walks outside to where a group of Katie's friends are talking. Through the interaction, she finds out a couple key details. Becca, the girl who was there when it happened, is in a mental hospital after what is likely severe trauma from the experience. That Katie had a boyfriend who she went up to a cabin with a group of friends. And that they all watched a cursed VHS tape. We see Aiden inside as he heads upstairs and into Katie's room. In the reflection of the TV, he sees the same mushy figure Katie saw from earlier. Rachel shows up to usher the little guy out, but sticks around herself to do some poking around. In a binder, she finds multiple magazine clippings of people with their faces scribbled out and a receipt from a film processing service in Seattle. The next day, we catch up with Rachel walking out of what is likely that photo place, with a handful of pictures from Katie's trip. When she gets to the last one, something's off. Every face in the photo is distorted. She does a little digging and finds news sources about deaths of every single person in the photo. What's even more odd is that the time of death for all of them is 10 p.m. You know what that means. Road trip!
Making my way downtown, walking fast, faces past and I'm homebound.
Rachel rolls up to the inn where the teens stayed that weekend. She asks the front desk guy about the kids and finds out they stayed in cabin 12. He mentions they don't have cable and the reception there is awful. So over the years, they've collected a library of VHS tapes for guests. One of these catches her eye. A tape with no cover or label just sitting on the shelf. Thinking maybe she stumbled onto something, she decides to stay the night in cabin 12. The same one the kids did that weekend. Love this set design, by the way. As the sun sets, it shines through a tree with red leaves, bathing the cabin in a fiery glow. Rachel pops the tape in the VCR. This is the moment that made me put analog horror in the title. A series of creepy images flash across the screen. Editing Darkness Tales here, so I was going to play this little creepy video that she watches all the way through, but Paramount decided to be jerks and denied my claim of fair use. Cool. Thanks, Paramount. But I'll still give you a couple pictures that I think are going to matter for the rest of the video. So here you go, and enjoy some music behind it as well. Ugh. Man, this copyright stuff is something. All right, back to the video. As soon as the video is done, the phone starts ringing. A small voice on the other end whispers the iconic line.
7 days.
We cut to the apartment with the text Thursday on the screen. Aiden is getting himself ready and heads out to school on his own. Walking down the street in the rain, he makes awkward eye contact with the dude as they pass each other, not saying a word. Back at the apartment, this same guy, who we come to know as Noah, is sitting there with Rachel trying to sort through the weird anomalies of blurred faces in the photos. She gives him the rundown on the whole situation and is rightfully tentative on the idea of showing him the tape. He eventually pressures her into it. When he's done, the phone starts to ring, but she lets it go to voicemail. He's clearly not spooked by the tape, but she gets him to do some research into the thing to try to figure out where it came from and who made it. Back at work, she makes her way to the AV research room to watch the tape again to see if she can glean any information from it and create a copy. On the control deck, she notices the time codes start acting odd, showing nonsensical symbols. The screen shows a fly that looks to be on the TV, but is actually part of the video. In the elevator on the way to Noah's apartment, we see the words, Friday, day 2. This apartment is insane, man. I don't feel like a career in audiovisual tech is going to grab you an apartment like this in downtown Seattle. He seems confused, giving a bit of exposition that the tape essentially has no information on the control track to identify anything about it, equating this to being born without fingerprints. It's almost like the images just appeared. There was never a camera recording. When going through the footage, Rachel notices on one of the images there's more that they can't see. When Noah's assistant walks in. Clearly, more than that, she gives him a kiss on the cheek. Oh, Noah got himself a goth girly. Rachel grabs the tape quickly before this chick can take a look at it and makes her way out. At the elevator, Noah says he's not going to get worked up over this, and they have a small confrontation clearly indicating some type of romantic history there. Walking out of the building, she happens to stroll underneath a ladder. One eerily similar to the one in the video. Saturday, day 3. Rachel decides she needs to talk to Becca to try and get a bit more information. Becca is in a mental institute as established earlier and apparently has some trauma relating to TVs, as the nurse has to block her view while they walk by. The two meet up in a room and Rachel is doing all of the talking. She asks how did she die, to which Becca responds in her medicated haze,
I need to know.
And you will. She'll show you. 4 days.
In an AV lab, Rachel starts going through the tape to print out screenshots from the video. One in particular she's trying to get is whatever that image her and Noah couldn't stretch to before. Pushing the limits of the machine, she eventually gets it. A lighthouse. She goes to print and the machine gives out. Trying to get it working again, she winds up on the image where the fly can be seen on screen. Only this time it's different. When she stops the tape, the fly's wing twitches. She reaches up and picks the fly right out of the video. Just gonna take a second here to pause and say this is such a cool shot. The way it's done feels so seamless, which was probably pretty difficult to do in the early 2000s. Her nose starts bleeding as the employee comes to check on her. She quickly grabs her prints and takes off. Sunday, day 4. In the library, Rachel is looking through books of American lighthouses, seeing if she can match up the one from the film. She ends up pinpointing it on Moeska Island. Back at her office, she does some research and stumbles onto an article about the renovation of the lighthouse. A photo of the Historical Society shows the members involved, and among them is a woman with dark hair. The same woman from the mirror image in the video. Anna Morgan was tied to the property as a well-established horse breeder. In 1970, a mysterious occurrence happened as many of the horses began drowning themselves until the day Anna took her own life, leaping from the cliff into the rocky waters below. While she's reading all of this, her hand is actively scribbling on something. Rachel looks over to see she has scratched out Anna's face in the same way Katie had done to the magazine clippings. Monday, day 5. Noah is grabbing some stuff from a convenience store when he notices himself in the security monitor. His face, distorted and blurred. Rachel decides she has to go upstate to investigate the situation, so she gives Ruth a call asking for her to babysit for a couple days. Mid-conversation, she starts choking, doubling over as she starts pulling something from her throat. In one of the more visceral scenes of the movie, she yanks an electrode on the end of a cord from her gut. As she creeps around the apartment trying to sort through what's going on, she walks into Aiden's room. In the middle of a puddle of water, a girl, soaking wet, with long dark hair, sits in a chair facing the window. She goes to check on the girl when a rotted limb reaches up and grabs Rachel by the arm. Visions of a hospital room flash in her mind, including herself sitting in a chair like she's the subject of some sort of experiment, until she suddenly sits up in bed, realizing it was a dream. To her horror, the handprint from where the girl grabbed her is burned into her skin. From the other room, she hears the tape playing and is flushed with terror as she sees Aiden watching the TV as the film ends. The phone rings once and Rachel lets it go, then twice, at which point she answers screaming. Leave it alone! But it ends up being Noah on the other end saying he believes her. She mutters, "He watched the tape," and Noah asks who watched it, at which point she says this.
Our son.
And yep, there it is, Tuesday, day 6. In the rain at Ruth's house, Noah and Aiden chill in the car while Rachel is inside. We get a little backstory as to how Rachel and Noah had Aiden at a young age, but due to his immaturity and fear of becoming like his dad, he backed out of the parenting role, distancing himself from the two. They drop Aiden off, and Rachel gives him the gist of the story about Anna Morgan on their way to the coast. They make a plan for her to head to the lighthouse and horse ranch, while he goes to the hospital to try to dig up as much information about Anna as he can. Before she gets on the ferry, Noah hands her a drawing Aiden made for her, and they take off on their missions. Rachel is looking through the papers when one of the articles she's reading mentions Anna Morgan had a daughter. Walking around the boat, she sees a horse trailer and doesn't understand the basic idea of ask to pet. She starts petting the horse when it starts freaking out and escapes from the trailer. The thing gallops at full speed over the edge of the ship and into the water below. It gets sucked under and decimated by the ship's propeller, turning the water into a dark red soup. Just a wonderfully, disgustingly horrifying sequence of events. We catch up with Noah at the hospital, who ends up tricking the employees into letting him know the records are in the basement. He breaks into the place through an exterior door using only a crowbar. See this right here? This is realism. We're just gonna... He sees a fly crawling on a door and takes that as his sign. This is where the records must be. Rachel catches a ride to the ranch home and meets Richard Morgan out working on the fence. She introduces herself and he knows right away she wants to chat about the horses. He lets her know he doesn't breed horses anymore when this happens.
That must have been hard. On both of you. You and your wife.
She comes right out and shows him the VHS tape, saying she thinks it's a message from his wife. He gets immediately defensive, indicating he knows something. This moment right here is important for the context of the film when he says,
"What is it with reporters? You take one person's tragedy and force the world to experience it. You spread it like sickness."
He kicks her out, and as she walks away, she turns around and looks at the house. The drawing Aiden gave her is a picture of that exact house. In the foreground, he drew a family of 3, with the little girl's face scribbled out. Noah is rooting through records when he finds what he's looking for, Anna Morgan's record. He finds she had numerous miscarriages, one after the other, when a folder in the name of Samara Morgan suddenly falls out of the file with a bunch of haunting thermography prints and a note that video sessions were terminated at the father's request. Aiden is drawing picture after picture of a ring of light at the end of a dark tunnel when Rachel calls. She asks him where he saw the house in his drawing. He says the little girl told him to draw it by putting the images in his head. Rachel goes to the only doctor's office on the island. She brings up the Morgan's daughter and the visions to the doctor, and there's a hauntingly knowing look that comes across her face. The doctor tells her the Morgans had been trying to have a child for a while, until one winter they came back from the mainland with Samara. From then on, Anna was seeing awful visions, but only when Samara was around. While this girl was on the island, things like harvests and livestock were having rough years, and Samara was acting odd. The doctor referred them to a psychiatric hospital on the mainland, and they haven't seen her since. After that, things on the island got better. Noah made his way to the psychiatric facility, where he has an interaction with the records keeper. This guy right here is my favorite character in the movie.
You know, I'm not an idiot. You try and walk out of here with my file, and I'll be on you like white on rice. You understand?
Yeah. The guy pulls the tape he's looking for, only to find the box is empty, and the last person to be in possession of it was Richard Morgan. Rachel goes back to Richard's place and pushes her way into the house. She finds her way into a room with a box of stuff on the floor next to an old television. It's a whole bunch of documentation about Samara. In the VCR is a tape. The same one missing from the records. The tape shows hours and hours of footage of Samara. She apparently doesn't sleep, and the doctors are trying to get answers out of the girl. They pull out the thermographic photos and ask her how she makes them. She answers,
I don't make them. I see them. And then they just are.
As she's watching this, Richard shows up behind her. He smacks her across the head and walks upstairs. Rachel follows him and finds him in the restroom. He's setting up to take himself out using a bunch of electrical equipment and a full bathtub. He says she'll never stop showing people the images. Rachel tries to reason with him, saying she has to stop her or her son will die, to which we get the coldest line in the movie.
Oh yes, he will.
He flips the switch, electrocuting himself, while Rachel panics, screaming and stumbling out of the room. Noah shows up and catches her, trying to calm her down. She has an epiphany looking at Aiden's drawing, and they head out to the barn. Up an old, rickety ladder in the loft of the barn is what appears to be a makeshift child's room. Again, another great set design here. Noah notices something under the wallpaper. The image of a tree burned into the wood. A tree bearing a shocking resemblance to the one on the hill by Cabin 12. Wednesday, day 7. The two make their way up to the cabin. Rachel has lost hope. She tells Noah to use his time to help Aiden, but he throws a fit in frustration, not wanting her to give up. In the midst of the chaos, he knocks over some decorative marbles. The glass beads start rolling on the floor and all congregate at a low point. They pull the rug back to reveal a water-damaged, moldy patch of floorboards. Noah grabs an axe and starts getting after it. Below the floorboards, they find an old cobblestone well. They push the lid off and stare down into the dark abyss. In the cabin, the TV starts to flicker. Water starts oozing from the television and nails and screws loosen themselves. From the depths, a horde of flies comes exploding out of the well, and now with the floor anchors loose, the boards collapse, letting the TV slide down, hitting Rachel over the edge, and she plummets to the bottom. She wakes up in chilly water, choking and gasping. Noah goes to find something to rescue her as she looks around for anything that could help. She finds scratch marks and a fingernail dug into the wall. Slowly, the lid of the well closes itself, locking Rachel in. In the water, her hand gets tangled in long dark hair as a sudden vision comes over her. Samara is standing by the well when her mother walks up. She says some comforting words and suddenly, Anna suffocates her, then whispers, "All I ever wanted was you," before chucking the girl down the well and closing the lid over top. The last thing Samara sees is the faint ring of light. Rachel snaps back as the body of the little girl floats to the surface. Overcome with sadness and emotion, she holds Samara, muttering that it's okay as the body rots away in her arms. Noah is back at the top, screaming down that the sun set. Rachel survived the 7 days. CSI shows up and recovers the body. Noah and Rachel sit there traumatized, but safe. Samara just wanted to be heard. Her story is told and now she can rest in peace. Noah says he can't imagine being stuck in a well like that, wondering how long you could survive. Rachel whispers, 7 days. We see Aiden asleep on the floor. Kids, man, I have a 2-year-old who does this sometimes when she refuses to get into bed, so I can confirm. Noah and Rachel pick him up and head home, seeming to have the desire to at least start working towards being a family. The next morning, Rachel wakes up next to Aiden. It's the first truly sunny day we've seen in the movie, and we have a sense of relief. Aiden asks what happened to the girl, and Rachel responds by saying they set her free. In this moment, anxiety brews as he sits up in bed. With the first bit of panic we see from the kid, he says,
You helped her?
Yeah.
Why did you do that?
What's wrong, honey?
You weren't supposed to help her.
Back at Noah's apartment, we see him reading the paper when in the background the television switches on to static. He turns it off, only for it to turn back on to a picture of the well. Rachel desperately calls to try to get through, but he's too preoccupied with the girl crawling out of the well on screen. Rachel starts speeding towards his place. In what is arguably a top 5 most iconic horror scene, Samara slowly emerges, crawling out of the TV, soaked in dripping water. Noah stumbles back in horror. She watches as he tries to crawl away, but it's too late. Rachel arrives at the apartment, running up the steps. When she gets into his place, she sees him sitting at a chair, facing away. Slowly, she walks up to him. As the chair is turned around, the haunting visage of Noah's mangled features causes her to scream in terror. She gets home screaming at Aiden to go to his room. She thrashes the original tape, screaming, "What do you want from me?" Then asks this.
What did I do that he didn't?
She stops, realizing the difference. Samara wants to be heard. She doesn't want to go away. And by making a copy of the tape to show someone else, she has helped spread it like a sickness. In the final scene, we watch Rachel walk Aiden through making a copy. This moment is so powerful as Aiden asks,
What about the person we show it to?
and Rachel is just seen looking stoic and numb, as that does not matter to her. All that matters is saving her child, and she'll do whatever she has to, even if it means showing someone else the ring. Say what you will, but I adore this movie. This feels like a story using what we now look at as analog horror, making the whole thing feel ahead of its time. I mean, this was when the internet was really starting to boom. It's like those chain emails that say, "Send this to 5 people or this demon will come get you tonight." Or creepypastas like Smile Dog, where spreading the word is the only way out. While it probably isn't an original idea, I think the way the film uses the analog medium to tell this story is brilliant. At the end of the day, it's easy to look at these older movies with rose-colored glasses. Some elements hold up, and some don't. But that's okay. That's not necessarily why I watch them now. I already know what's going to happen, I know the plot beats and jump scares, but they transport me back to a time when shadows danced with innocence, where I first confronted the unknown. They remind me of sleepovers, late-night whispers, and the thrill of a good scare. Nostalgia for these films isn't just about fear. It's about the joy, the laughter, and the memories forged in the dark. It's about sharing what matters to you and spreading it to the world. Thank you all for watching, and as always, have a terrifying evening.